Another episode of Done Dissertation Office Hours. I'm your host, Dr. Ramon Goings, founder of the Done Dissertation, where we demystify the dissertation process so that you, the doctoral student, can write and defend your dissertation in 1 year or less. In today's video, we're going to talk about 5 tips for preparing for the faculty interview. I know for many of you all, this is probably coming right on time. You probably have interviews lined up and you're trying to figure out, how do I get through this process? How do I navigate this? I'm just only a student. Sometimes you kind of think in those terms still. And so I want to talk through and give you some strategy on how to think, different about that process. So I want to give folks a minute to jump on. If you can, let me know in the comments where you're coming from, who you are, your doc student, faculty, where you're coming from. Just drop your comment in the chat. And then also share this with 2 or 3 people that you know that could benefit from this. And I'm going to do the same right now, right before we get started. So we're going to give about another 30 seconds, and then we're going to go ahead and get started. And as we're preparing, I want to give a special shout out to Dr. Heather Cotnola Pickens, who was my first graduate assistant, my first year as faculty at Loyola University, Maryland, back in 2016. She just successfully defended her dissertation today, and I had the opportunity to be on her dissertation committee. So I'm extremely proud of the work that Dr. Heather has done and will continue to do with her research on the experiences of women of color with homelessness and how they seek services. So just shout out to Heather today, because I was excited to be on her dissertation defense. And if you follow me on Instagram, you probably saw a reel from that defense that I posted today, just to give you some inside perspective on what does it look like to go to a dissertation defense. And so again, we're going to go ahead and share this with 2 or 3 people that you're going to find some value. But again, we're going to talk about 5 tips for your faculty, for preparing for your faculty interview. And I wonder right now, for folks who are on, if you can in the chat, wherever you're watching this, can you let me know if this has ever been something that you all discuss in your doctoral program? It's like, does your doctoral program explicitly talk about securing a faculty position? Hey, Ron, we got Ron from Austin, Texas, a doc student. Hey, Ron, it's good to see you, man. I'm glad you're on. And you're consistently on too, Ron. So I appreciate you. You're going to get this knowledge, man. So I appreciate that. I would love to know, like, do you all have this conversation in your doctoral program? Perfect. Now that I've shared it out, we're going to go ahead and get started. So today's topic is we're talking about the 5 tips, and I actually have a 6th bonus tip about preparing for your faculty interview. These are just things that I've seen from being on search committees, having gone through the faculty hiring process myself and being successful at it. And then also for what I've seen being the search committee chair, and some things that you really want to consider when you are going into your faculty interview. The tips I'm going to provide cover both the semifinalist interview, which may be done via Skype, but I'll give a specific suggestion for that interview, or Zoom now. And then also you got to think about your finalist interview, which, depending on your institution, your state, your location, these days it seems like to be spread out, whether you're in person or remote. So again, these are things to consider in your format of your actual interview. Will make a difference on how you might navigate this. And Ron says, haven't discussed this topic. Yeah. A lot of times in doctoral programs, there's something that's typically missing, but I think is really important for folks to have in order to get through the process. So the first tip that I want us to start thinking about when you're applying for or going to the faculty interview is that, particularly, and this message is for doc students, right? As a doc student, you have to, and even as an early career faculty, you have to stop thinking about yourself in the mindset of a student, and you want to start thinking about yourself in the mindset of a colleague. These are 2 different thought processes and mindsets, right? Because as a student, you think about like all these folks that have their doctorates, like they are, up here and we're somehow down there because there's this power differential because we don't have our degree quite yet. But when you go to your faculty interview, and this is for folks who may be ABD or maybe like getting ready to finish up the dissertation, and you're going to your faculty interview, you want to start thinking about yourself as a colleague. And when you do this, when you start thinking in this way, you will approach your interview very differently. Because what I want you to do is have the confidence to know that you are enough as a faculty, you are brilliant as an academic, and you have a lot to provide that institution. And the fact that your thought should be, not only am I a colleague, but you all should be happy to have me on your campus because I'm going to make this place better. You really want to go into it with that particular mindset, and not this mindset, well, I'm still a student. I don't know how to write for publication. I don't really know what the job's going to entail when I become a faculty. Like, no, you don't want to have that type of sense of insecurity coming into it. You really want to go into your interview with the confidence to be able to talk about your work, but then also to feel like these are colleagues and not people that, have some type of power differential because they have the doctorate and I don't. And I think this is a mindset shift that you have to consider, because a lot of times you all have been in doc programs, 4 years, 3 years, 4 years. I got some folks that have been in their doc program 10, 11 years at that student phase. So you can kind of get stuck in that student mindset. But now when you're going for faculty positions, you are a colleague. And for my doc students, this is important in particular, right? Because when you're going to apply for a faculty position, you are going to be competing, and particularly when you're going, of course, you all will be going for assistant professor positions, even with this adjunct or lecturer, you're going to be going up against other doc students who are just finishing up just like you, but also you're going to have other assistant professors who might be moving from their first institution to the second institution at the assistant professor level. So they have some experience. So they have some things they maybe can talk more in depth than maybe you wouldn't have as a doc student. So this is why I think first you have to come in there confident and know that you're not a student at this point. You're going into this faculty interview to really nail it and really do your thing with this. And we got Queen FD. I think that's Brandy. Good to see you, Brandy, on here on Instagram. But again, I think the mindset piece is so important. We get trained to be students. We stay in that mindset too long. And you go into your faculty interview operating like a student, you're going to be not getting the position because someone's going to come in and have more confidence and be able to talk about their work in a different type of way than you are as a student. So that's tip number one. Start approaching and thinking about your interview from the mindset that you are a colleague and they should be excited to have you on their campus versus being a student who is just thankful to have an opportunity to interview. Those are two different mindsets and something you got to consider. The second tip I want you all to consider when you're putting together your not dissertation, but preparing for your faculty interview, what I want you to start thinking about now is that whenever you are getting ready to interview, whether this is on the phone, Zoom, Skype, whatever they're doing these days, interview, or your on-campus finalist interview, you want to start right now. Once you know you have an interview coming up, you want to immediately go to the university's website to look up the university strategic plan, the college where your program might reside, or where you're going to be a faculty member. You want to see if they have a strategic plan. And then if your department has one, that's even better. You want to look and see if you can find out all those strategic plans, because what you want to do is when you go into your interview, both your semifinalist and finalist interview, when you're responding to questions, when appropriate, you want to tie what you do and some of your response back to the strategic plan. And I see this way, like a lot of folks have equity and inclusion statements, or equity and inclusion is a top priority of the university. So if I got asked a question, hey, Ramon, we love your research, but how do you think your research is going to contribute to the university? My response then is, hey, you know what? That's a great question. I really value what you all have laid out on your strategic plan for 2020 to 2023, where you say that diversity, equity, and inclusion is a priority of the institution. My work, which focuses on Black males in particular, is in a direct correlation to that, because I noticed when I look at your institutional data, this is one of the groups that you are looking to support because they have a lower graduation rate than other groups on campus. And then I will talk more about my research and really tie it all together. So this is the thing. You got to be smart. You got to really study these institutions, because, again, you're trying to showcase not only that your excellence as a scholar, but that you took some time to really think through and craft a good response. So, again, you want to look at the institution, college, and department strategic plan, and then you want to tie your your responses to that when applicable. So not every question, of course, is going to be applicable there, but this is something that you want to start doing and really want to start thinking about. And if you like, I don't even know anything about this, I don't know where to start, like go to your own university where you are currently a doctoral student and look at their institutional strategic plan. And if they don't have one, that's a whole other issue. But I'm pretty sure at this point, most institutions have them. And typically, even private institutions are good about having them posted somewhere on the website. Sometimes you got to dig around a little bit, but most times, if you look at the office of the president or the cabinet, or maybe in the board of trustees, you'll see the strategic plan somewhere in the university administration information documents on the website. And this is a key. You got to be a student of the institution that you're applying for. And so this is taking you up a notch over some candidates who are just thinking it's all about them. Remember, you're trying to get this position, but you also are trying to showcase that you took time and effort to really get to know the place that you want to work at. And I think this is really important. So that's the second tip. The third tip, which I want to go into, is more pragmatic, right? So I want to give just an easy, simple suggestion, something to consider, particularly when you are doing these virtual interviews. Like this suggestion here is for virtual interviews. You want to make sure that your background, both virtually, the virtual background, or your background behind you when you're doing your interview, and the background in terms of noise, so the audio background is clear. You don't want to have a backdrop visually that gives a signal that you are sloppy or all over the place, and you shouldn't be judged on that. And I'm here to tell you that it shouldn't be like that, but it is. And if someone says that it's not, they are not telling you the truth all the time, because a lot of times folks are making judgments fairly or unfairly by how you present yourself. And presentation is not only how you look personally on the interview, but now with the Zoom whole situation, we got to consider, what does our backdrop look like? So in this case, literally, because I knew I was going to do I do a lot of interviews nationally. I'm always on Zoom doing a talk. I do these things. I had this bookcase built for that reason, for the appearance. If you look at my old videos, you actually see a white wall behind me, or my green screen, because sometimes I would use the green screen. But I built this because of the perception, right? You really have to start shaping the narrative, and your interview starts as soon as they see you on the camera. And so this is something that's unspoken, but something that can drastically impact those who are successful in the faculty interviews and those who are not. And it's not to say that it makes a huge difference, but it's just something that you want to make sure that you address. And then, more important than the visual, right? So my suggestions here is, like, if you have something like a bookcase behind you, that works. You have just a blank wall, that actually works really well. You just want no distractions. If you have nice artwork, go ahead and showcase that. You can definitely do that. But I just want you to make sure that you have no distractions, because you want your committee, the search committee, to actually listen to what you have to say and really take in all the things and learn about your work in an intimate way. And you want them to be distracted visually. Another suggestion that you can do is buy a green screen. I have one, bought it on, like, I think Amazon or somewhere for like $70, and I put it behind me. And then if you're on Zoom, you can put your own backdrop behind you, so you can make it an office, you can make it whatever you like. That way you don't have. I know for some of you all are particular. I don't necessarily care, but I know some people do that pixelated thing when you put the backdrop behind you and you don't have a green screen. You ever notice that the pixels move? Like, if I'm not the only one that noticed, drop something in the comments. Like, I know I hate that too. Please let me know, because I know a lot of people see it, and you have colleagues who are just moving around. It looks like pixelated, and so a way to solve that is to get a green screen. They're pretty inexpensive. If you're looking to save cost, you can go to like a Dollar General or a Family Dollar and get like a green tablecloth, and honestly just stick it up, or stick it somewhere behind you. Like, if I was doing that, I would post it like right behind me on the bookcase, and I would have the green backdrop. So that's just something to consider when you're putting together and trying to prepare yourself visually for the interview. Now, audio. There are a couple of options that you can do. So on the low tech or low end side, and you still get a pretty clean audio, is that you can use the headset that, the wired headset that comes with typically the older cell phones. Now they're starting to get rid of all these things, but you want to have the wire headset that has the microphone, so you can hear them clearly, and then they can hear you through the microphone. And then also, if you happen to have any noise behind you, it will kind of cancel out and dead out some of that noise. So that's on the low end, right? Those you can buy at like a Five Below for about like $4 or $5. Get your headset. If you want to spend a little more money and you go like the wireless option, you can do like your AirPods, any of those earpieces that you can use that allow you to hear and have a microphone attached. There's so many on the market, and now there are a lot of great ones that are like under $100. So typically when I'm on Instagram, because I stream this in multiple places, you typically see me with the AirPods, and I don't have them in today. But that's usually something that you can consider, right? So that's one route. And then also, if you want to take it up a notch, another suggestion I have, and again, this is some tech stuff, just make sure you're prepared, is that what I do, and I'll show you my setup, is that honestly, you can use, I like these USB microphones. Like, the audio comes out crystal clear. It's not a lot of, you can dictate the direction. So on these microphones, they have settings where you can say if the audio is coming from in front of the mic behind the mic, both in front and behind, or all around the mic. So I think I love this option. The one that I currently have set up in my office that you're hearing me on is called a Blue Yeti microphone. I'm just showing on Instagram, and so folks can see. I'm not sure good on Facebook because I can't really pull it that hard. But if you have a question about it, just shoot me a DM and I'll send it to you. But again, a Blue Yeti microphone really does the trick. And again, your audio comes out pretty clear and really doesn't have a lot of background noise. And so that's a more cost option. It's like I think the one I have is about $100 or maybe $130. But this, again, something to consider, and it's an investment in yourself, and it's an investment in your career. So it's not only something that you would use for these faculty interviews, but you're going to use it when you teach, whether you teach virtually. You're going to be on a bunch of Zoom meetings these days. So you just want to have it as part of just your, faculty setup. And this should be part of like your faculty starter kit. If I had to put something together, this would be definitely one thing I would recommend to have in your arsenal. But again, this is all about preparing for the interview. It seems very small, but again, your audio and video make a difference. And then also another thing to consider is to have a more upgraded webcam. I'm not as concerned because there are some costs to that. There are a number of ones. The one that I used to use, and I'll show it, folks on Instagram can see it. Let me see if I can turn around this. Is this Logitech camera that you see right there? And then also what I use now, what folks watching on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and LinkedIn will see is that I have a Canon EOS Mark II camera that I use to stream with. So again, it's all about, exploring what options are best for you. And so again, I think that's really important. And I want to just say thank you for folks that have been tuning in online. I see Dr. Nashay Bennett, one of the former doc students at Morgan. Congrats for finishing. We have Carrie Henderson says, so many people forget to make sure their backdrop is in order when online. It's so important. It's really important. And we have a LinkedIn user that says, so true, plus a noisy background, be it audio, visual, distracted interviews. Yeah, you don't want people to distract you. And I think it's just something that's really important. Oh, yeah, and someone's on LinkedIn said, yep, the colors, some of us are color be blended into the background sometimes. Yikes. Yeah, so this is all things that you just want to start considering and thinking through and thinking about when you are putting your materials together. And again, I think that this is so important. And shout out to the Doc 21 for joining in on the live. Hope all is well. And so if you finding value so far out of this, just drop me some love in the chat. Throw a heart up on the post just so we can get this moving to more people, and make sure that you share this with 2 or 3 people that can benefit. So that was tip number 3. We all talk all things about preparing for that. Your audio, your visual for your faculty interview. And again, it's the small things, right? But it's the things that do make a difference. So the next piece I want to talk about is around a question that you will get asked on both your faculty interview, the semifinalist interview, which might be online via Zoom, as well as the finalist interview. And it's around your research agenda. So this tip is what I want you to start doing is you need to be able right now as a doc student, you want to be able to start discussing your research agenda and then be able to kind of forecast 3 to 5 years out as to where do you plan to take your research. This is in particular for the folks that are applying for tenure track faculty positions, because what's happening is that the search committee is trying to see, one, are you a scholar? You demonstrate that you have the entry credentials by getting your doctorate, right? But they want to see, are you thinking forward about your about your research? So you want to think about what does the next 3 to 5 years look like? And what I find for a lot of students, and this might be you, so if it's you, just drop that's me in the chat. What I find for a lot of students, they think so much about the dissertation, they don't recognize that the dissertation is one piece of the bigger picture. And so if you heard me talk about research agenda, you're like, shoot, I don't even have one. That's something you really want to start thinking about. And you really want to start thinking about your dissertation as one piece of your research agenda. It is not the whole thing. And I think that is something we have to consider and think about differently, because I think a lot of folks really put a lot of onus in on their dissertation. But at the end of the day, that is just the entry level criteria to get through this degree program. And so again, this is something that you want to start thinking about. And I love if you have a question about, I don't know what to do for my research agenda, let me know and I can talk through what that would look like for you. And I'd love to hear any questions folks might have at this point. So again, we are talking about being able to articulate and talk through your research agenda and how your dissertation is one small component of the bigger picture. And again, a search committee is looking to hear that. Like you have to be able to articulate how your dissertation, your work started with your dissertation and then expanded and grew from there. Any questions about that before we move forward? What I'm going to do, which I'm pulling up right now, and we'll be able to hopefully be able to show it to folks who are watching via via LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter. Is I want to show you all. I'm going to share my screen with some of you all so you all can see, and I'll show it on Instagram too. So just bear with me on the tech for a quick second. And what I'm going to do is just show you my research agenda and talk through it because I think it's important for you to really start thinking about when you're thinking about your research agenda. And so let me go ahead for Instagram. I'm going to turn you around real quick so you all can see. I'm going to take you here for a moment. Again, thank you for your patience with this. We're going to try to set up a little different. Again, I want to do a little more teaching and some things that we need to consider. Okay, so my initial dissertation research started out focusing on in the green box. I started out focused on gifted and high achieving Black male student success. My dissertation focused on the academic and social experiences of high achieving Black men who attended historically Black college and university. That's where the work started. So when I went into my first job talks and my first interviews, of course I talked heavily about my dissertation. But if you see, I had two other areas of research that were going to, that allowed me to talk more about what did I see my work doing in the future. And so with that, because my work focused on Black male students in schools and in higher education, what ended up happening for my dissertation was that they talked about the importance of their K through 12 teachers and how having Black teachers was impactful to them. That's why I ended up focusing my work on diversifying the teacher and school leader workforce. And what I found in that diversifying the teacher and school leader workforce is that we had to start really figuring out ways to think through and really start being mindful of how are teachers and students getting into gifted and talented classes, who is supporting them, and how is it helping gifted and talented students progress through the pipeline. So when I would go on faculty interviews, I would talk about all these things as a part and a component of my research agenda. This is something that you really got to start putting together right now. And this is something that, thanks to a mentor, Dr. Donna Ford, she really had me start to think through initially as I was progressing through my doc program. And so again, this is all the things you really got to start being mindful of when you are applying for faculty positions, is being able to talk about your research agenda. And so from there, so far we talked about, making sure that you have a mindset of a colleague versus a student. The second tip we talked about is having knowing and reading the strategic plan of the institution and make sure you tie everything to that. The third tip I talked about is how to prepare visually for your and audio for your Zoom interview. And then fourth is how do you talk about your research agenda? The fifth tip that I want now to start thinking about is that you need to be prepared for the types of questions that you're going to get asked on the interview. And I know a lot of folks are wondering, well, what questions do I get asked? And so typically the questions are going to revolve around three areas of faculty life: research, which everyone kind of often thinks about, teaching, and service. And so now is the opportunity to really start thinking about your research, teaching, and service in a way that can get you the support that you need, and be able to articulate that in a way that gets you through the faculty interview process. Typically, research is pretty straightforward. You all, pretty much usually have that handled because you're doing your dissertation. That stuff is up top of mind. But the teaching part. So if you haven't had much teaching experience, sometimes what I suggest folks do is talk about ways that they've taught adults in different environments. So I know a lot of folks sometimes have taught people in like the adult learning space, maybe have done workshops or professional development, maybe have taught in the community aspect. So there's other ways that you can teach that don't always happen in the classroom. And so when you get asked questions about teaching, maybe your pedagogical style, you can talk about those experiences and be upfront. You said, at this point, having, being someone who's recently finished the doc program, I haven't had much formal teaching experience in the, higher education setting. However, I have taught in, a community organization, or I have been a K through 12 teacher. So if any K through 12 teachers on, they ask you questions about pedagogy, you definitely go back to your K through 12 and show how you're going to use those same skill sets to work with, students in higher ed. The skill, my K through 12 folks, the skill set remains the same. I'm a former music and special education teacher. It all is applicable. Everything you learned in your teacher prep program and you're learning as being on the field teaching definitely applies to teaching on the college level. You're just learning adult, working with adults, but really all the skill sets are the same. And so again, this is something that's really important. And then lastly, service. So if you haven't already as a doc student, if you're applying for like the tenure track faculty positions, service is not as important. It depends on where you're applying to. But they want to see that you're involved somehow, like either you attend your disciplinary conference. You might want to consider, what that looks like. So for me, my discipline is in education. So a lot of times as a doc student, I was applying for and presenting at the American Education Research Association. Whatever your discipline is, you want to make sure that you're at least attempting to apply to present, or attending like the grad student networking event, like being immersed in that community. Because a lot of times these positions are dictated by the community that you have. So you got to build that. And with that was the 5 tips I wanted to talk through today. But I have a bonus one for you, a 6th one. This was something I was thinking about today when I was on riding the Peloton, is that I want you all to start thinking about that. As much as you are being interviewed for a position, you are doing the interviewing of that institution as well. Because, I see a lot of students who get consumed with the name of the institution. Like it's the quote elite institution in my field, the top program in my field. But if you go in that interview and you find that that it's a toxic environment already, and you hear from students and you kind of see it, you need to run the opposite way. Because here's what's going to happen. You get into that environment. If they're going to show you that they're toxic before you get there, imagine what's going to happen once you get there. And if you're a scholar watching this that's coming from a marginalized community, that's heightened times 10. And so again, you want to think through, and you want to be at a place that you actually enjoy. There's no need to be at a institution only for the namesake and the prestige. And it's really for what other people think about the institution. It's not even about what's happening for you. You may feel like it gives you some clout, but that's really just other people's perspectives about the institution. And so that is not important. And that's something I really want you all to really think about. And someone on LinkedIn says, shop the program, not the school. That is an absolute fact. And I'm sorry I can't see your name on my screen right now. I want to give you a shout out for that, because it is the absolute truth. Shop the program, not the school. Because these people, they are hiring you to get tenure, right? And so for most institutions, that's going to be a 6-year time frame. You're going to be somewhere 6 years and be in a toxic environment for 6 years? Nah, it's life too short for that. And so I really want you all to start thinking about like making sure that the institution, how they operate, the people in the department are in alignment with how I feel and how I think about moving forward in my career. And if they're not in alignment and you figure this out on any of the interviews, you know that institution is not the right fit for you. There's another institution out there. As much as you feel like, oh my God, there's no position for me, I'm never going to get a position, there's so few and far between, you have options. I think a lot of doc programs too, sometimes your disservice will tell you or really try to push you to faculty when there's way more opportunities out here in addition to faculty to really make an impact in your field, to make an impact in your community, and to also make an impact in your wallet. And so I really want you all to start thinking about that you have options, you have a doctoral degree that can be leveraged in so many ways. And this is exactly what we do with our clients who work with us in the Done Dissertation, and particularly in our leverage your doctorate mastermind. And, that's something we offer for doctoral students who have earned their doctorate and now are looking to leverage their doctorate. And I think that is something that you really got to start considering now. And it all starts with thinking about that you are interviewing the institution as well as them interviewing you. So you should be asking questions about, what is it like for, faculty from my community on campus here? What are the supports that I have? What's the monetary support outside of salary that I get? Do you all have, faculty stipends to attend conferences and professional development? Is it a hassle to get access to those funds? Do we have a PD budget for, books and things like that? Am I able to make connections with others in the field? Like I'm lucky I'm at an institution that has an eminent scholar program where literally I can select a mentor from anywhere, any institution, and they pay for myself to do a lecture at that faculty member's institution and for that faculty member to come to my institution. So again, it's some of those perks outside of salary you got to consider and that really cultivate a culture on your campus. And again, that's just something you really want to start thinking about and consider as you're moving forward in the dissertation, in the faculty interviewing process. Because again, I know we're thinking like as doc students, but now you got to put time to take the doc student hat off and put like the colleague doctor hat on and really start looking at these institutions in a way that to ensure that you actually want to be there long term, or at least to get through the next 2 to 3 years to give yourself a chance to get settled. So with that, those are the 5 strategies and tips that I have for the faculty interview. Number 1 is that you want to approach your interview like a colleague and not a student. Remember that you are a contributing member to the discipline and you want to show that in your interview. Second is that you want to review the strategic plan of the institution, the college, and the department where you're applying, and tie as much as you can your responses to that strategic plan. 3 is that if you are getting ready to do a Zoom or some type of virtual interview, you want to make sure that you address both your virtual and audio backgrounds to make sure that they are sufficient for nailing the interview. Number 4 is that you want to start thinking through now, how do you articulate your research agenda 3 to 5 years out? And your dissertation is only one small piece of that. And number 5, I want you to start being prepared for questions that center around your research, teaching, and service. And actually, to get more information about this, I talk about this a lot in my book, 14 Secrets to a Done Dissertation, of questions to think about when you're thinking about your research. So that is definitely a place to go. And then for a lot of folks who are just tuning in and getting to know the work that we do, I talk more in depth about some of the mistakes that I see doc students making that impact them from transitioning to a tenure track faculty position. And what I want to do is give you a free guide. It's called our 10 dissertation mistakes that doc students make that prevent them from securing a tenure track position. And so I want you to make sure you take a look at our guide. And if you want access to it, you can visit www.dissertationmistake.com. And again, that's www.dissertationmistake.com. And I'm going to put it in the chat for my folks on Instagram. And again, I want to make sure that you all have access to this. But at this point, are there any questions that you have? Because I would love to take any questions that you might have about the process, about securing a faculty position, or just experiences that you might want to consider when thinking through applying for faculty. I know folks, sometimes there's a slight delay, so I want to make sure that we give folks a little bit of time there. Any questions, comments, thoughts, concerns? Yeah, Big Steese joining on Instagram. We're talking all things faculty interview. So if you have a question, I'll stay on for another 2-3 minutes if you have any questions about the faculty interview process. And thanks for Carrie for dropping the link in. So make sure you grab it, www.dissertationmistake.com. You grab a free guide, and it talks more about some of these things in depth, in particular around your research agenda, really thinking through how do you make this smooth transition from student to faculty member. And now is a great time. You're starting to see, I'm seeing them more and more on Twitter. Seems like everybody's posting there. I'm excited to announce post that I got a faculty position. So I want to make sure that you all do the same. So make sure that you have this insight. And so with that, I don't see any questions. I'm just checking the chat. Let's see. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up for the evening. If, again, you have any questions, comments, thoughts, feel free to shoot me a message We look forward to supporting you to get through the dissertation process. And for those who are just tuning in who haven't had a chance to work with me yet, my name is Dr. Ramon Goings, founder of the Done Dissertation. We demystify the dissertation process so that doctoral students can write and defend the dissertation in 1 year or less and transition to a faculty position. And so this is our specialty, getting folks from student to faculty member. And so if this is the support that you need, make sure you grab this free guide, the 10 dissertation mistakes doc students make. And you can grab it at www.dissertationmistake.com. And I look forward to seeing you all next week when we talk about another aspect of the dissertation process. I hope you all keep moving, get that dissertation done, and I'll see you next week. Peace.